Hey, I'm Alex Rackle from Board Game Co. and today I'm reviewing Shamans by Studio H, and this is an interesting and slightly hard game to explain. You see, to begin with, it's a trick-taking game. Easy enough. It's also a hit-and-roll based game where you're going to be playing on a team the whole time. Again, easy enough. But you're only going to have a single winner. There's not going to be multiple winners in this game. There's going to be a single winner. You're going to keep playing more and more rounds until one person has the most points, despite the fact that you're playing a trick-taking game where you'll spend your entire time playing on a team. Now, which team might vary round to round? You see, ultimately in this game, you're either playing on the Shadow team, trying to get the Shadow token to get all the way there, or alternatively, you're playing as the Shamans or whatnot, and you're trying to play cards and trying to outlast the Shadow players. So that's the goal of the game. Now, the gameplay is going to be, like I said, a trick-taking game. You're going to, as if you're leading right now, you're going to pick a card from your hand. So I have my hand of cards, and I'm going to pick one to play. I'm going to go ahead and pick that 8 because the truth is I'm actually going to go ahead and pick a gray. You see, I'm looking around the board and there's no gray currently out, which means the chances of somebody having a gray are slightly higher. I'm going to go ahead and play that gray card. I'm going to lead the trick with that card. From there, we're going to simulate other players at the table. So I'm going to grab a selection of cards for the next player. Let's pretend that this next player, let's actually go ahead and define our roles. Let's pretend I'm good. So I'm good over here. I got that card. We're going to pretend the next player playing is also good, but I don't know that, okay? Because again, hidden roll, trick-taking game. So we're going to look at his hand of cards, and we're going to look at his cards and see what he can do. Now, he fortunately is good. He's going to go ahead and actually lead with this one because he wants to get the lowest number. The highest and the lowest in this game are helpful. Now, let's go ahead and simulate the next player. The next player is going to be bad, okay? The next player has a giant hand of cards. Now, ironically, the next player doesn't even have the right card, so he's going to have to break the trick. So he's going to go ahead and break the trick, and he's going to break the trick with a, he's actually going to break the trick with a, this one over here, this blue. Oh no, I don't have any gray, and no one believes him. Now, the funny part here is they all think he's a Shadow now because he has this giant hand of cards. He actually doesn't have gray, but we're going to go ahead and move that forward one because he broke the trick. So every time you break the trick, we're going to do that. Now, the next player we're going to decide is good. But the next player, let's see what he has. He also can't break the trick. He also can't follow. So he's going to go ahead. He's a little better, though. He's going to play a card in a suit that hasn't been played yet, and we're going to break the trick. But again, they think he's bad. And then finally, the last player, we're going to say, well, we know the last player is going to be evil. And he's going to go ahead, and he's actually, now that he's seen two players break the trick, as the Shadow player, he's specifically going to follow the trick because that way it really makes these two look bad. Granted, he is bad, she isn't, but yeah, we're going to go through that. That's basically the gameplay of Shamans. Now, there's a few other things going on here. The person, you're going to go ahead and put them cards to their respective colors. This color goes over here, actually, and this color goes over here. Now you're going to go ahead, and the person who played the highest card in the matching trick is going to lead the next round, and also if you had played all the cards of a suit, they get to go ahead and take that location ability. Location abilities are going to have a variety of effects. We'll cover some of them shortly. And then the other players, the player who played the lowest color in the suit, in the matching suit, is going to go ahead and take one of the artifacts for the round. Either the face-up artifact or one of the visible ones. And this is where the game gets interesting, because he could take a dagger, which is useful for killing players, or you could take this card, which is going to make you show your roll, which might be useful. In fact, we're going to go ahead and take this show your roll card, and now we're going to reveal, which I knew, but they didn't, which player played the one. This player played the one. We're going to reveal that I'm good. Now, all the other players know I'm good, which is very helpful for me. That's basically what's going on. So a quick recap. You're going to have a bunch of players on various teams, and this will vary by player count. In a 5-player game, you'll have 3 good people, 2 bad people. Then you're going to have a person leading the trick. Other players will follow. The people who don't follow will cause a shadow marker to advance, which you may not have a choice. You might be good and still not have a choice and still not be able to follow. The player who played the lowest card in while following is going to go get an artifact, and the player who played the highest card while following is going to become the leader for the next round while also taking one of the location-based abilities. Those location-based abilities will vary from gaining points to killing other players as long as you have a dagger. You can need to have a dagger and get one of the dagger locations in order to kill another player, which can be very useful and be a huge way that you win. I would argue it's nearly essential for you to win as a good team. You're going to need to kill the Shaman players in this game. And then other abilities are going to involve things, even things like changing teams, for instance. You'll have things like changing teams, and there's going to be a whole variety of artifacts over here, all giving you different abilities. This one's going to go ahead and have you shift the cards, and we're going to have things like, showing your roll, or getting points, or moving forward or backwards on this track, a variety of abilities in the artifacts. That's basically the idea of this game. Now, Shamans is an interesting one because to begin with, this is a very clever combination of mechanics that mostly works. I'll get to the mostly part shortly. It has trick-taking as the core mechanism. Oh, one thing I forgot, sorry, is going to be the point system. You're going to get points in the game through various different things. You can get points from here, from this card over here. You can get points from a variety of different tokens in the game, but primarily you get points based on winning. So if your team wins, you will get points if your faction wins. So you always want your faction to win, but you want to end up with more points than other players, which can happen either by being in more winning teams, you're trying to get to 8 points, or by getting in-game points as well as winning the game points. So, Shamans has a few things going on combined to make this game very interesting. The combination of trick-taking and hidden roll lend itself to a very interesting premise that feels unlike any other game I've played before. And in general, I don't like basic trick-taking games. I tend to like the exceptions, and Shaman is going to be an exception. I like games like The Crew, I like games like King of 12, I like games like Shamans, where trick-taking is very much there, but the game is clever enough or different enough that I appreciate the trick-taking nuance at play. General trick-taking has never really landed with me quite as much, but when you combine it with interesting mechanisms that totally shift up what I'm trying to do, that's when I tend to appreciate it, although I'm not necessarily good at it. That's a different conversation entirely. The beautiful production values combined with the clever play just make this one very intriguing to play out. You're going to play your first game having no clue what's going on, having no clue how to manipulate the board state, and then once you're done with your first game, having had a few things happen along the way, maybe you killed another player, maybe you got killed, maybe you advanced the token all the way to the end, maybe you tried following suits and weren't able, maybe as a shadow player you were too obvious and got killed. There's a bunch of things that will happen across the course of the game that will lend itself to diving back in for game 2 and game 3 and trying to figure out the puzzle here, how to actually evolve across however many games you end up playing to achieve that win, because you're going to want to be the person who walks away with 8 points at the end of it all, which means winning multiple games in a sequence as you play this game. So for the most part, it is a clever puzzle that works well despite the weird mishmash of things that I wouldn't normally think would work. As far as what I don't like about Shamans, it's really only going to be one thing, but it's kind of a big deal, at least as far as our experience goes, which is, despite enjoying the actual gameplay, despite finding this puzzle fascinating, we have found personally within our group that the shadow players almost always win the game. The game seems to be ridiculously unfavorably balanced towards a shadow player's winning. Now, to be very clear, whenever I experience something like this, I do go to the forums, I do check, I want to see if that's a me problem, an us problem, or a game problem, and based on very few other people addressing this or talking about this at all, this seems to be an us problem. It might be that we haven't figured out the trick-taking aspect of the game or the balance of how to do it. Yes, we've tried killing shadow players, and that's happened, and the shadow team has still won. We've tried really, I don't know, we tried a variety of different strategies and it just hasn't really worked out well for us. The shadow team almost always seems to win. We still enjoy the puzzle, and there still is a puzzle there. There's a puzzle of when to switch teams, of how we're still constantly trying to actually get to that end result. But it is a kind of big deal that despite enjoying the general gameplay, for ourselves, maybe we're just not good at trick-taking games. We don't play a lot of them, but for whatever reason it is, we have found that the shadow team mostly seems to win. The game seems favored towards the shadow team, and that can only potentially get worse, especially as you get to the end game. As you get to the end game, you might often have 2 shaman players who actually have enough points that they don't want the other players on their team to win, because then someone else will win. Meaning, even though you're on the same team, you don't win together. So I might be on the same team as you, but if you have 1 more point than me, and winning this round would cause you to win the game, then I kind of want to tank it, which gives these shadow players another way or reason to win. So that has been there's the only complaint I really have against Shamans, but it's a fairly big one as far as our experience would go. As far as what I can see others not liking, this game is not really intuitive to teach. The very nature of the trick-taking combined with the hidden roll make it a very clever game, but one that is not intuitive. It's a little harder to get that mindset of how the game plays out in people's heads. You kind of have to play through a round or two, in my opinion. And then lastly, sometimes you can play through an entire round, not an entire game, but an entire round of play, and feel like you didn't get to do anything. The nature of having a player lead the trick and having you either lead the trick or get artifacts if you play the lowest card sometimes means you'll just feel like you don't have that much control over what goes on, especially as a good player who's not even trying to, do anything clever as far as hiding who you are. We have found that sometimes you can have fairly boring rounds. Again, not full games, but rounds as you go through it. As far as final thoughts on Shamans, this is a tricky one for me to rate given my experience with it. For me, I'm going to be giving it a 3 out of 5. My rating scale is 1s are bad games, 2s are games that are not for me or too many issues, 3s are going to be good games, 4s are great games, and 5s are the very best games in my collection. And Shamans is a tricky one because I really like the gameplay of the game. I just find myself returning less and less to it as we consistently find the Shadow team winning, meaning my problem with the game is not the game, my problem with the game is the seeming degree of imbalance, a degree of imbalance that I have not seen anyone else really having, so I think it's an us problem, but it still very much does bias the way I perceive the game. I enjoy it, but I don't know how to win unless I'm a Shadow player. That's overall going to be my review of Shamans, an interesting and tricky one to review given the end result I actually have with it, but nonetheless, that's my thoughts and opinions on the game. Until next time, I'm Alex Radcliffe from Board Game Co. Hope you enjoyed this video, and as always, have a good one.